meeting to order, and I've been instructed I must read a little something so for everyone. In accordance with Governor Baker's executive order permitting virtual meetings during the COVID pandemic, the Cemetery Committee is conducting this public meeting today, December 2nd, 2020, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Zoom platform in accordance with the town's policy directive and guidelines issued on April 1, 2020 and amended on May 7th. This meeting has been properly noticed with the town clerk. I ask that all Cemetery Committee members, town staff, and presenters activate their video and mute their microphone unless they have something to say or are participating in committee dialogue. For members of the public, when I open the meeting to public comment, please unmute yourself or raise your hand by hitting *9 on your phone, or select raise your hand option by your name in the list of participants. If you're recognized, please state your name and address. This meeting is being recorded and will be available for later viewing on the town's website. I hereby call this meeting to order. All committee votes will be taken via roll call. We'll start with an attendance roll call of the committee members. When I announce your name, please reply present or some such thing. Andrea Solomon.
Present.
Jerry Susi.
Present.
Leo Carroll.
Present.
Brian Davidson.
Present.
And I'm Paul Cook, present. The deed signing. Andrea, I want to thank you for doing that each week, each month. And we'll leave that to you and Tish for later.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. The next proposed cemetery meeting is Wednesday, January 6th, 2021. Does that work for everyone, as far as you know? No problems? Very good. Then we tentatively and hopefully we'll meet again on January the 6th in the new year 2021. We have the minutes from both October 7th and November 4th. I trust that everyone has read them. If they're approved, this also is something that Andrea will sign, our vice chair. Thank you, Andrea, in advance. First of all, the October 7th minutes. Do I have a motion to accept those?
I motion to accept.
Andrea Solomon moves that we accept the October 7th minutes, and I will second that. Paul Cook, I second it. All in favor? Let's have a roll call. Andrea?
In favor.
Jerry?
Aye.
Leo?
Aye.
Brian?
Aye.
Paul, and I say aye as well. Therefore, the October meeting minutes are approved. November 4th, do I have a motion to accept those?
I motion to accept.
Andrea moves that we accept the November 4th minutes. Do I have a second?
Second.
Who is that?
Brian.
Thank you, Brian. So Brian David seconds. All in favor? Andrea?
Aye.
Jerry Susi?
Aye.
Leo Carroll?
Aye.
Brian Davidson?
Aye.
Paul Cook, I say aye as well. The November 4th minutes are approved. Let's move on to D1, the chair comments. I first of all want to thank Brian Davidson for overseeing the letter that went out about the bicycle issue to various committees. Thank you, Brian, for doing that. I heard there was even some feedback already that at some point Aaron can mention to us. And Jerry, thank you for overseeing the thank you letter to Tamara Kond. Appreciate you doing that. Everyone had a copy of it, I think, in the that Aaron sent out. Did everybody see the draft of the letter that Jerry wrote? And I believe that letter has gone out. Is that right, Aaron?
I do not believe we sent that out. Justine, has that gone out now?
We're waiting for today's approval?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Jerry, thank you for bringing it up to this point, and we'll get to that shortly.
Okay.
And I want to just, as I do every time, I just want to recognize and acknowledge the fact that the town of Concord is exceedingly fortunate to have Aaron McCloskey and Tish Hopkins overseeing the cemetery. The cemetery is really it's just so much has gone into keeping it nice and making it look good, making it one of the major tourist attractions in town so that it's attractive for all the people who come see it. And so I just want to acknowledge Aaron and Tish again for their work in so many ways that are unseen by all of us, but we know they're doing. So thank you to both of you. I would like to move on to the staff report. And so I'll D2, and I'll give it to you, Aaron, to take away.
Thank you, Paul. Just for record, I'm Aaron McCloskey, Superintendent for Highway and Grounds. So during the month of November, statistics for the cemetery, we had 10 lots were sold, and we had 10 interments for the month, and 9 lots were sold. That brings the total interments for the year, for the fiscal year, to 57, and total lot sales to 65. Our contractor, landscaping contractor, Einstein Solutions, started the fall cleanup. They are continuing on with that, and they should be done here in the next few days. Tish is overseeing that operation and had some inspections earlier this week with the contractor. They have a few follow-up items that they'll take care of this week, and then we should be pretty much squared away. And continue to monitor for any winter storm damage or any trees or branches that might come down. We didn't really see any significant damage during the windstorm from a couple of days ago, which was great. Events in the cemetery, I'll let Tish speak to. There was a Veterans Day event, and I don't know, Tish, if you want to provide a little detail on that from last month, that was since the last meeting.
Nothing like normal. A very small contingent from the Public Ceremonies Committee and the police department had their honor guard there, marched in from the Pritchard Gate just to the flagpole. They played taps and raised the flag, and then marched back out. I gave the fire department all the flags, and they burned them that day, but just behind their fire station on their own without a crowd. So all the flags were retired.
The much larger, a much smaller event from larger previous years' events, just due to COVID.
Yep.
In the state of emergency. So, other than that, that's pretty much it for kind of operations. We did do some tree planting last month as well, and if folks have seen those trees kind of planted throughout, I know we talked about it a little bit during the last meeting. But the tree planting program was completed for the season last month as well, and operations gonna kind of continue. So we continue to see a lot of visitors in the cemetery. So there's still people, both using it as a place to visit, as a tourist attraction, to visit, their family members, or to, to pass through on their way across Concord.
Yeah. Aaron, I wanted to mention in talking about tree planting, I just wanted to return to the subject of tree labeling and the Friends of Sleepy Hollow's project to label, I think it was what was the number, 19 or 26?
26.
26. And I think that's been all taken care of, but have we written a letter of thanks to the Friends for their investment and their trouble?
I don't believe we have a official letter to them. We've had some communication with them, but if we want to draft a letter, we can draft a letter.
I will do that. I will draft a letter and share it with everyone, and we'll send it off next month, hopefully. Any questions for our superintendent regarding his staff report? Thank you, Aaron. Let's move on to D3, the rate hearing mausoleum lot sales.
We have a couple procedural items that we have to walk through, and Anna Trout is here to assist us with that.
Yes, and if I may, this is Anna Trout. Mr. Chair, we do have an attendee of the meeting whose name is simply Alex. And I would like to ask if they could be so kind as to identify themselves. It looks like they may have trouble connecting to audio. But if they'd be so kind as to rename and provide us with their full name. Thank you.
Or could they email you, Anna, if they're having other difficulties?
Certainly, they could call my cell phone, 617-851-0036.
Right.
And we just need to technically wait 1 more minute to 4:15 to start the rate hearing.
Okay.
Posted for 4:15.
I want to welcome Bill Robichaux. We haven't seen you in a while. Glenn Burlamaki, welcome. Richard Fallander, welcome. And welcome to you, Alex, whose surname we don't yet know. Hello, Justine. While we're waiting, there's one other thing that I didn't mention when we were talking about the chair comments. The lady, Justine is now filling her role, and we wish her all the best. Mallory Price has moved to California, and I thought it might be nice to send her a thank you letter for her service to the committee. And so if I will draft such a letter, but if anybody has any comments they want to add, just send me an email and I'll put that in the letter as well for the rest of the cemetery committee. Okay? All right. I think we are now at just about 4:15.
And Mr. Chair, if you'd be so kind as to make a motion to open the public hearing for the purposes of the rate hearing, mausoleum lot sales, that needs to be seconded in a roll call vote.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Anna. We are now going to proceed to a rate hearing for the Concord Cemetery. I'd like to move that we begin this hearing. Would someone like to offer a second the motion?
Brian Davidson will second.
Thank you, Brian. Let's have a roll call vote. In favor or opposed? Andrea?
Aye.
Jerry?
Aye.
Leo?
Aye.
Brian?
Aye.
And Paul, I say aye as well. So the rate hearing is now in session. I'd like to give it to Aaron to sort of discuss and go over the fee chart with us.
Okay, so in the packet that went out to the cemetery committee, there is a proposed rates document. And Anna, do you have that, or can you allow me to share? Actually, I can share. I'll share my screen. So what I'll do is I'm going to share for those folks that are looking in that are not on the committee, that do not have the copy of the rates. I'm going to share a screen here that will show the document, and we'll walk through the updated rates. And then I will turn it back over to the committee to have a discussion on the proposed rates. Can everyone see this document? It's a Word format, Concord Cemetery fee schedule.
Yes.
Try to zoom in a bit here. So the only items that have changed on this document are the highlighted sections. So obviously the effective date, if the committee wishes to do so, would change to today's date or whatever date the committee wants to make these rates and changes effective. First line, the word entombment has been added. The fee has not changed. The second line, the word entombment has been added. The fee has been changed to $90 per half hour to cover actual costs of overtime worked for interments or entombments. The third line, the word entombment has been changed or added, excuse me. The fourth line item, The word entombment has been added, and the half-hour fee has been changed to $60 to cover actual costs. And this last item here, disinterment, the fee has been changed to $2,000. For the fee schedule. And for the sale of burial rights or lots, we've added mausoleums. We've added 2 areas for mausoleums because in previous meetings, we've provided the 3 lots that the committee has voted to accept in the old section. And then we are currently working on surveying and identifying locations for mausoleum lots in the newer section. We feel that we'd rather establish a rate for those during this hearing as well, since we've had a lot of discussion with the current committee, and the committee's educated themselves on mausoleums and lots within Sleepy Hollow. So you can see here, the first line is mausoleum old section. For current residents, the price would be essentially the lot would be $500,000. The perpetual care would be another $500,000 for a total of $1 million for a mausoleum lot for a current resident in the older section. Per the rules and regulations, it's a 150% of the lot cost for a former resident. So you can see the lot fee is actually $750,000, perpetual care is $750,000, and the total lot price is $1.5 million. For a mausoleum in a new section, again, these areas have not been identified yet in the new section, but a proposed lot would be in the newer section, $400,000 for the lot, $400,000 for perpetual care, for a total cost of $800,000 for a current resident. And for a former resident, a mausoleum in the newer section, $600,000 for the lot, $600,000 for perpetual care, and $1.2 million for the total price. And that is what is being proposed. We had previous discussions and meetings about some type of a maintenance fee, but after kind of reviewing the costs, what would be required, we feel that the perpetual care fee covers that. Any maintenance that might be needed in the future from Public Works, cemetery staff. So this is the rates that are being proposed after discussions at previous meetings with the committee.
Thank you, Aaron.
So I'm going to stop sharing just for the purpose of discussion within the committee who has the current rates, and then I can share again if there are questions.
Super. Thank you so much, Aaron. I just want to give a little bit of background and context before we talk any further. This whole consideration of mausoleums began 6 years ago when a Concord citizen approached Tish Hopkins wanting to buy a mausoleum site. Now, there was only one site in the entire Sleepy Hollow Cemetery. It's the Pope tomb right next to the Melbourne Memorial. The Pope tomb was purchased in 1930. There's been no development of any mausoleum since then, nor as far as we could determine, has there been a request for one. So 6 years ago when the request came in, we really didn't know what to do with it. And so we began by doing research regarding other cemeteries, what they charge, the dimensions, the specifications for a mausoleum. And we talked to all kinds of people. This has been 6 years in the making to come to this position now. This is obviously very, very unusual real estate in Sleepy Hollow Cemetery. It's right next to one of the most important memorials in Concord, and for that matter, in a cemetery in the United States, the Melbourne Memorial, which we've just restored recently. And so there's only room there we've determined for 3 more mausoleums. So we did the survey, we determined there was room for 3 more, and then we had to determine what the value of these would be. Obviously, this is for an individual who wants to spend a great deal of money on such a site. These funds would be used for the improvement and maintenance of the cemetery. And since they are so unusual and it's such prime real estate, so to speak, and because we've done research on other cemeteries where they've had similar situations, we've come up with these suggested fees. So with that context, with that background, I'd like to open it to the committee for further discussion, and then to anyone else in the public who has comments or questions.
I guess I'd just say, Paul, as the newest member of the committee, it's just amazing the amount of work that people on this committee and past committees have put into getting to this point. And so it's very exciting. I just reiterate, I think we could all agree Sleepy Hollow is, probably a top 10 most important cemetery in the United States, if not top 50. And these spots are just premier. And, we've asked our, townspeople, the employees to go out and gather this information to come up with a fair market value for these lots. And, it is a high price, but this is what the market research dictated back to us. And as a committee, I think, we have the important duty to the town to maximize the resources that we have. We're selling these lots, we don't get a redo. This is for eternity. So, I just, fully support, the position that the town has taken, that these values are, in total, $1 million for these positions.
Thank you, Brian. We did have a public hearing actually in November of 2018, held in the townhouse, and we had a number of people come. We had all kinds of input, and there was a good deal of support and interest for the mausoleum, as well as for building the Columbarium, which is something we'll talk about later today. Other thoughts or comments after Brian's remarks?
I just wanted to remind people who were on the committee when we first started talking about this, and then for our newer members, that there was at first a great deal of anticipation over whether the townspeople would be amenable to this because of the high price of these lots. And I know that we discussed different prices over the years, and I just want to make sure that we did in fact do enough research into comparable cemeteries, that the prices for the mausoleums are in line with other community-owned cemeteries. I know this has been hard to do because some haven't sold mausoleum lots in so long, but I feel like there was discussion 2 cemetery committee meetings ago about researching that more, and I didn't hear back if that had actually been done, or if this was just like last meeting we threw out this number of $1 million and everyone got excited and then we just moved on it. So I just would like to hear more about that research.
Right. I think Tish and Aaron both did some phone calling. We had some numbers from maybe a couple of years ago when we did the same thing to 3 different cemeteries, and we got a range of values. Aaron or Tish, do either of you have that information somewhat handy?
I don't.
At the last meeting, we had talked about that. We looked at the Newton Cemetery was around 200,000. Jamaica Plains was around 260,000. Mount Auburn was $1 million. And that was kind of what we had shared with the committee at the last meeting. And without making I don't think we made a suggestion to the committee that those were similar comps for what we could find in the area of cemeteries that we felt were similar to Sleepy Hollow. Again, like Andrew stated and stated previously, there's nothing really identical to, those are private cemeteries, or we are a municipally owned cemetery, so there's not necessarily apples to apples, but obviously there's a historical significance at Sleepy Hollow, and which we felt would kind of elevate the price of any mausoleums that were installed. And then I think, at the last meeting, there was discussions and I would say I don't know if it was recommended by the committee, members of the committee, to increase that price and target a higher price, closer to $1 million, and see if they sell. And if they don't, I think if they don't sell, the price can always be lowered. But whereas there was only 3 lots in a cemetery that there are very few lots left in the older section, of any. the committee felt that would be more of an appropriate value for the lot. So that's what was put in the rate schedule to be shared with the committee members tonight. But ultimately, it's the committee to decide whether they feel it's appropriate number or to change that number. That's up to the 5 members to vote on.
Andrea, did you want to respond to that?
No, I mean, that's what I thought had happened. I think last meeting was the first meeting that the $1 million price was thrown out there. And I know it's very, like Aaron just said, it's very hard to compare. I mean, we're a town-owned cemetery and we're comparing ourselves to private cemeteries. On the other hand, we have this very prime real estate. We do want to make sure that people who are interested are willing to work with us very closely to make sure that whatever comes out of it is tasteful and acceptable to not only the committee, but the town at large and all the people who come to visit Sleepy Hollow. But I just wanted to have that discussion a little longer than just that last one that we had at the last meeting.
All right. Other thoughts or comments? The price that was, yes, go ahead, Jerry.
I just, if I could, you know, I guess, yeah, and in with regards to trying to compare, I guess what I have to go on based on the research is that list of 30 notable cemeteries, and any list of notable cemeteries is likely to feature Sleepy Hollow. So it really is a very compelling location. And I think, you know, I do feel a little queasy about a large number only because I can't see myself ever considering paying that. But that's, I guess that's just kind of a different thing. I mean, looking at it very objectively and, you know, kind of cold and hard. I mean, I think I'm okay with starting with this and then seeing what happens.
Thank you, Jerry. I think it was 2015, at the very end of 2015, when I was new to the committee, and Andrea, you were too. And there was someone else who was chair. Casey Winslow was chair, and she was leaving in a few months shortly after this. And one day in one meeting, Tish comes and says, "I've had a request for a mausoleum," and we were sort of, we didn't know what to say because we had nothing to go by. So we had to start from scratch, except that there was a mausoleum. There was one, the Pope tomb, and we did some research. And there was also concern that having a mausoleum would be elitist, that if we sold a mausoleum, it would be in some way creating classes of interred individuals in the cemetery. But it was a little late for that because there already are, I mean, some stones are enormous, some lots are larger than others, some lots have walls around them. There are distinctions, and there's also the differences between the new and the old area. And there exists already a mausoleum, the Pope tomb. But then there was concern that those who were on the waiting list, if someone came in with a large sum of money and bought a mausoleum site, they could jump the queue. There's a line of about, I don't know, what is it, 50 people, something like that, Tish, who are in line to get a burial site in the old portion of Sleepy Hollow Cemetery.
60s, I think.
Something in the 60s. And so we thought, well, the one thing we could do is write a letter to every one of those individuals saying, there are new sites available. They are going to cost a large amount because they're for mausoleums. But we did want to let you know, in the spirit of fairness, that there are 3 new sites going on sale. Also, I want to remind the committee and those who are new to it, that the individual who wanted to do this subsequently came with his architect, who was later voted outstanding citizen of Concord. with a complete design complete with drawings and mock-ups of what the mausoleum would look like. And they had done research in 3 or 4 other cemeteries in the greater Boston area. And they gave everybody in the committee a packet that was literally an inch thick with all the research they had done with specs, costs, and so on. They even proposed that if there were any problems with drainage or anything like that, that they would also pay for that. In other words, the individual who wanted to build this mausoleum was willing to go to great lengths to see that it was done and to help the cemetery do it. But we had to continually put him off because we didn't have any previous material to go by. So now finally, here it is 6 years later, I suggest we write that individual. I don't even know if he lives in Concord anymore, but say, well, just so you know, the sites are now available if you're interested. I also want to remind you that this is just down the path, maybe 20 yards, the first one, from the, or maybe 30 yards from the Melbourne Memorial, which is a very, in some way, it's the heart of the cemetery. So that's a little bit more information to support the notion that these are valuable lots. The Mount Auburn lots do go for up to $1 million, though Mount Auburn is a private cemetery. And furthermore, we heard that they hadn't sold one in a long time. Is that correct? As Aaron says, yes.
That is correct, Paul.
No. But anyway, these are the figures that we were talking about last time. And I was a little hesitant myself, but I was brought around by the enthusiasm of other members of the committee. And so I'm on board with them.
Paul, would you like me to, just for a refresher, since you're talking about location, would you like me to share the plan again that shows the location of these for folks that are?
That would be very helpful. Thank you, Aaron.
I'll show this quickly. Everyone see the plan here?
Right.
This is the plan. This is the existing Pope tomb lot. The tomb is this square here. The actual lot size you can see comparison to the actual footprint of the tomb. Proposed lots A, B, and C to the north of that, and you can see the next existing closest lots down Maple Avenue. These are the 3 additional lots that the committee has already voted to accept and to have marked out.
Right.
The Melbourne Memorial is to the south, just along up Maple Avenue here.
Right. And these lots are 20 by 20 feet. So it's 400 square feet.
Correct. But they would only be able to, per the regulations that were adopted by the committee at a previous meeting, they'd only be able to build out 240 square feet.
Right.
60% of the 20 by 20, 400 square foot lot.
Which is approximately, or maybe precisely, what the Pope tomb occupies, right?
Close.
Yeah.
I don't know the exact number.
Yeah. Further thoughts or comments by anyone?
Might I mention, if folks want to use their raise hand option, if they would like to be pointed out as to speak, and if you happen to be calling by phone, you can hit *9 to be recognized. And may I also remind the person who's called Alex, if they would be so kind as to provide us with their last name for our records. Thank you.
Anna, if you'll give your phone number one more time so Alex can call if he needs to.
I'm here. It's Alex Hoare.
Oh, Alex, good to have you with us.
Yeah, I just thought I saw the agenda and thought it was an interesting topic. So I've had a good time being quiet and just listening.
Good. Well, Alex, your family has a number of lots in the cemetery, so it's good to have you with us.
Thank you so much. And I know this has been a lot of work on everybody's part, and nice to see it come to near closure.
Thank you, Alex.
Do you mind spelling your last name, sir?
Hoar.
Oh, thank you very much.
So one more time, thoughts, comments, or questions from any participant or any committee member or any member of the public? Andrea, do you have anything further that you wanted to say?
No, I just appreciate that chance to talk about the pricing a little more.
All right. And Aaron and I were discussing a few days ago the whole question of the new section where we haven't even laid out the sites yet. Though we have every estimation, every expectation they'll be the same size. But since there is a difference even in buying a single grave between the old part and the new, we felt that should prevail in terms of the price of a mausoleum as well. And so you can see that the mausoleum for the new area is less expensive. It's 400,000 rather than 500,000. Do I have a motion from one of the committee members to accept these rates?
Oh, excuse me, Paul, you do have to close the public hearing first, and then you can make a motion to vote.
All right, thank you very much, Anna, for keeping us straight here. Do I have a motion to close this public rate hearing?
I'll make a motion to close the public rate hearing.
Brian Davidson moves to close it. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
And Leo Carroll seconds. All in favor? Let's go down the line. Andrea Solomon,
Aye.
Jerry Susi,
Aye.
Leo Carroll,
Aye.
Brian Davidson,
Aye.
Paul Cook, aye. So the public rate hearing is now closed. Now the committee, do I have a motion from the committee to accept this list of new fees and rates?
Paul, can you just add an effective date also?
I see no reason why it couldn't be effective as of today.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to accept the Concord Cemetery fee schedule as of 12/2/2020 as outlined in the handout that we've been discussing.
Thank you, Brian Davidson. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Jerry Susi seconds. Let's have a roll call vote. I'll begin with me, Paul Cook, and I say I support that aye. Andrea Solomon,
Aye.
Jerry Susi,
Aye.
Leo Carroll,
Aye.
Brian Davidson.
Aye.
So the rates are approved as of today, December 2nd, 2020. Thanks to everyone who was involved in this long process. And I'm delighted that we've come to this point. And I also think that we should write the gentleman who originally got us rolling, we should write him a letter.
I talked to him.
You've talked to him?
Yep, I talked to him yesterday. But he just sent me an email. Him and his friend that he was going to do this with are not at this time interested.
All right, well, that's good to know.
Yep.
We should, if you talk to him again, thank him for at least getting us to the point where if someone is interested, we're ready. Great.
I did. I told him I'd still let him know how everything went and what the prices would be because he's the one that we have to thank for all of this. So
That's exactly.
I'll still send him an email tomorrow. Yeah.
Wonderful, Tish. Thanks for doing that. All right, let's move on to D4, update on the committee's priority projects. Though I think perhaps because we have some people here for bicycle use regulations, is that I think the main reason why I don't know if Mr. Follander and Mr. Kemp are here. I think that may be why Mr. Robichaud is here. Is that correct?
That's correct from Nate's part.
Yeah, and Mr. Follander, is that why you're with us? Mr. Robichaud, is that why you're with us?
Yes.
I think we might, so that you don't have to go through this long slog over the master plan with us. We might move D6 to D5 if there's no objection on any of the members' parts. No objections? I move that we put D6 in the place of D5. I don't know if we need a motion for that. I think do we? No. So let's do that. Let's skip down to D6. We'll return to D5 shortly. The bicycle use regulation discussion. And I think that this was also twinned or paired with the letter that Brian Davidson wrote with the encouragement or the direction of the committee. And it was sent out just last week, I think, to various other committees to just put the cemetery committee on record for voicing our concern that we be included in any discussions about bicycle regulations in the town of Concord. Brian, could you just...
I could just share, we sent it to three of the committees, the Transportation Advisory Committee, Natural Resource Commission, and the Trails Committee. And I think we sent it out before Thanksgiving. It went out.
Yeah. And Brian, could you, I'm putting you on the spot, could you recap more or less what the letter said?
Sure. I think, it's just really kind of discussing, we've had some bicycle concerns in the cemetery and, they were kind of wide ranging. I think the most egregious being, cyclists making comments during burial moments. But we also had, some people riding, up and down the hills, creating some erosion, some, interference with people who are walking on these mixed use trails. The letter, again, I just wanted to say the vast majority of visitors to the cemetery, including those on bicycles, are very respectful of the cemetery. These are definitely, outliers. The cemetery has issues with many different issues. And, this is just one of them that we're just trying to address. So the letter was basically just asking that the different committees across the town have been taking up bicycling issues and ideas on bicycles. And we just wanted to be part of that conversation, especially on our border. We have the Reformatory branch. On the other one is Bedford Road. And there are trails that connect between those two. And so as people were coming up with ideas and messaging, we just wanted to make sure that the concerns of the cemetery were taken, and so that the town and all its committees can speak with one voice on bicycle regulations and issues and signage. And, I think we were really looking to just work with both town committees and the bicycling community. One, to address our concerns, but also, we don't want to just move unilaterally. We'd like to work in conjunction with all the different groups to address these issues.
Thanks, Brian. Aaron, you mentioned that you'd heard a little feedback from one of those letters. Could you briefly tell us what that was about?
Yeah, I did get a phone call from Natural Resources just asking, what was the intent of the letter for some clarification. Explain to them, essentially summarize what Brian's comments he just made. So, the committee wishes to be involved in future conversations related to anything that's going on with the trails or developments. There's some trail discussions going on regarding the Reformatory branch trail and where it terminates in Bedford. Bedford's going to be turned into a rail trail in Bedford up to the town line of Concord. There's currently not a plan to continue that rail trail into Concord. But I think there's, folks are discussing it. And that was really the extent of it. Nothing too much more than that. But just express some concerns too, like Brian just said, with some of the issues we've seen over the last year or so. But I think we've talked those out.
Yeah. Tish, you mentioned a meeting or two ago, one incident that I think caught our attention. It was during a funeral. Could you review that for us?
The graveside service. So there was a podium there that the funeral director was standing at and speaking, and the attendees at the funeral were sitting in chairs for the graveside service at the entrance to the path at that small circle, the cremation area where that new wooden bridge was built a couple years ago. That's the section they were in, and some bikers came out of the woods there, and there was signage. The funeral director had signage there, and some bikers came out of the woods and were yelling, "What is this, a wedding?" as they rode by.
Right.
They've been disturbed before. They've been disrupted by bikers going by just talking to each other. But this was pretty bad.
Right. Thanks, Tish. So, you know, the saying, it just takes one bad apple to mess up a barrel. So we know that this is not the usual conduct of bicyclists, but when it does happen, it does concern us. So this also caught our attention. There was a letter in the Concord Journal to the editor on November 19th on page 810 regarding the Reformatory Branch Trail. This is something that that Aaron mentioned. There is an interest in paving it from the Bedford line into Concord Center. And at the same time, we know that the cemetery owns the land to the south of the Reformatory Trail, even though it's undeveloped. And there are numerous little trails that run off of that unpaved Reformatory Branch Trail. And so we are obviously concerned that if that trail were to be further developed, it might prompt further traffic along the trail and then into the cemetery on those paths that connect the trail to the cemetery proper, the developed part of the cemetery. All this which leads us to pay attention to development ideas regarding bicycle traffic as it affects Sleepy Hollow. I think that what we really wanted to do today was just talk about what sort of things concern us and what sort of steps we might want to take to address these concerns. I was thinking that perhaps, and I did talk to Aaron about this, that perhaps right there, the place that Tish just mentioned, we could place a sign, one that comes right off of the trail where the Reformatory Branch is placed, and then one right as it enters the developed part of the cemetery where the funeral is being held, it was disrupted. Something that says along these lines, "Welcome to Sleepy Hollow Cemetery. Please be respectful of services in process. Thank you, Concord Cemetery Committee and Superintendent." Something along those lines, just to remind people where they are. I thought that would be a sort of minimal step, and I think the superintendent agreed with me that we might take, but perhaps there are other suggestions on the part of the committee. And I see that we also have visitors today with us who might want to make some suggestions or comments. So first, let me open up to other committee members. Any other thoughts about signage or about the general matter of bicycle traffic in the cemetery?
I guess I would share that, you know, there is a Reformatory Trail map that's produced by the town of Concord, perhaps, you know, and it has a number of sites along that trail that you could visit. Perhaps, you know, if we could meet with the makers of that map, and they could perhaps add, you know, a disclosure or some kind of box, you know, that, you know, just kind of discloses what you just said, Paul, you know, that to, you know, please keep in mind that this is an active burial area where ceremonies could be in progress, you know, obviously better language than I just articulated, but something like that. Also, I don't know if, you know, we have a visitor center where a lot of people go to, and a lot of people, there's areas there to, you know, people can rent bikes. I don't know if there could be a signage there just to remind people even that as they enter, you know, it is the third popular visitors spot here in Concord, that, you know, just to make them aware. I mean, I think clearly the vast majority of people want to be respectful. I mean, I don't think most people are doing this, although it's happening, you know, it's not necessarily, you know, intentional, but, you know, they're riding bikes and that's their mindset. And then other people are there for the burial ceremony. So perhaps, you know, just additional signage and make awareness. You know, I don't think there's anything we can do that's going to address, you know, the rogue person from the story we just heard. You know, I don't think there's anything we can do for that. But, you know, I think just being more awareness. Also, you know, I think I was wondering, you know, down in that Chestnut Hollow area, to prevent cars from going around the circle, we have a rope. But I noticed the rope also goes across the full width of the road there, which sometimes forces people who are bicycling to then kind of go around that rope. I was wondering if maybe we could rethink how we block cars from that area, but that would still allow, you know, a bicycle to remain on the pavement to get through. Because I know down in that section, especially, I think last year, we had photos where people were, you know, riding their bikes across grass to get around that chain, but of course they were riding over graves. And so, you know, that's, you know, obviously the disrespect. So, but again, I'm not sure necessarily, you know, fully conscious of exactly what they were doing. I think they were just thinking, I got to get around this chain. So that area there. And for some of the areas where I know, you know, especially the youth have been kind of riding off trail and down those hills. I didn't know if maybe we could look into certain plantings, if there were certain areas where those paths were popular, you know, that if we could perhaps plant bushes or trees, that may prevent people from riding, you know, down those paths.
Right. Thank you, Brian. I was walking there last year and there was a kid, this was like in March, I think, doing laps on his bike. Cause I took a long walk and I saw him 3 times go by me. He was doing laps on those because they're pretty exciting trails. I mean, if you're bored on your bike, it's like you can do some jumps and various things. And he was enjoying doing that. Some of those trails can get muddy though, and can get pretty torn up by using them that way. Any other committee member would like to make a comment before we open up to public comment? Go ahead,
Paul,
Jim.
yes. Hi. I guess I just want to clarify that, you know, the concern isn't someone riding a bicycle to go to the cemetery or riding a bicycle to the cemetery, getting off the bicycle and walking the bicycle through the cemetery. I think the concern is riding the bicycle in the cemetery. Is that accurate?
I think mostly some of it, I think that's pretty accurate. I think we're just riding through the cemetery is not necessarily a problem. It's just doing so without consideration of others and also riding on the unpaved trails. But perhaps other members of the cemetery committee have further comment on that.
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment, and that is that I think, you know, some people don't have cars. All they have is a bicycle. So, you know, for them to be asked to get off their bicycle when they're in the cemetery might be a little bit of a stretch, but I'm not so concerned with that. What I'm concerned with is the erosion that's taking place. So I think what we might want to look at is the inevitability of people going from the Reformatory Trail into the cemetery. And so we might have one trail for them to go down and then try to do some type of action to keep the bikes off of areas where erosion is taking place. Now, one specific spot is from the hollow, Chestnut Hollow, that circle at the end of Chestnut Hollow, up to you know, Author's Ridge. There's a spot there, and I walk it every day, and it's erosion. It's just getting severely damaged. So if we can just somehow discourage bikes from going down that, we will stop that erosion from taking place, I think. So that's one. And then I think the other is in the cemetery when you get to the circle at the hollow, and you go across the bridge off to the right, that trail across the wetlands gets damaged when it's soggy, which is quite often. I mean, just go over there right now and you'll see how deep the bicycle tracks are. So, you know, those two areas, I think something should be done to discourage further erosion and damage to those trails. As far as, yeah, I don't think you're going to keep people out of the cemetery on bicycles. It's just inevitably be there. So we might want to, accept that people are going to go from the railroad tracks with the Reformatory Trail into the cemetery, and then provide the best road for them, and then put some type of things up to try to minimize the number of people that are doing damage to the other trails.
Thank you, Leo. That's very, very good. Very good.
And I just say, I think the number one thing is just, working with the other town committees and with the public, and with, the bicycle groups in town. I think that, education and working together is probably better than any other one single step that the cemetery committee can take.
Further comments from cemetery committee members? Then let's open it to comments from some of our public visitors today.
Paul, if you mind, would I be able to make a couple quick comments?
Yes, please do, Aaron. Go ahead.
Thank you. So we've, like I've mentioned earlier, the number of tournaments we've had this year so far is 57. We've had the one complaint that Tish had mentioned. There's been a couple more that we've talked about over the last, I'd say, year, about disruption to funeral services. And I think that's our main concern, is disruption to those services. And that's the item that we have to address. And I think, from an operational standpoint, we have a tough time with, I guess, resources. If we're talking about, how do we want to address, like, what are the issues? I think, let's prioritize the issues, and then how do we address those issues? I say the issues of disruption of funeral services. So let's address that specifically. And I think the best way to do that is with continued signage. Like you mentioned, Paul, you have a couple individuals, we don't want those individuals to ruin it for the greater good. There are a lot of bicyclists that do use the cemetery. And I would say 99% of the bicyclists are operating at reasonable speeds, being respectful, transitioning from, Concord Center to the Reformatory branch trail system, and there are no issues. It's the one-offs that we hear about or that we see that are causing, take it to the level that we're having this discussion this evening. And I say, let's try to address that. This committee at a previous meeting had, there was a motion to take a vote to restrict bicycle use that, obviously that did not, did not move forward. So what do we talk about for next steps and what's reasonable? And so when I think about what's reasonable, I look at the staff and how do we enforce any regulation that we put in place. Tish, we have one employee who works at the cemetery supervisor. She's not a police officer. She's, supervising the entire cemetery. It needs to focus on that. So if we're putting some type of restriction in place, it's not reasonable that we can't enforce. A restriction is only as good as you can enforce it. So what I don't want it to be is just, static noise in the background if we over-regulate, if you will. I think the suggestion of signage at the location of the Reformatory branch trail system, and then also the limit of the hollow down there before the bridge would be best. And I think it's a great idea. And we could finalize some language and maybe additional signage at a couple other locations, maybe the ones that, near where Leo had referenced and where some of the erosion issues are going on as well. And some other access points from the Reformatory branch trail that Brian had mentioned, putting some signage out there just to communicate our expectations of users of the cemetery, not only bicyclists, but, people walking. Could have people walking and making those comments. We discourage that also as well. And we could work with the local, the funeral homes and the directors to make sure that we have the appropriate signage either available for them to use or they provide it during the service time. So that would be my recommendation from at least the operations standpoint, is put some signage out there. Let's communicate the expectations and maybe communicate it to the different user groups. And I'm glad to see some representatives from the avid bicyclist community here attending this meeting so they can hear for themselves and provide also any comments that they have. So thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. That's good. That's good. Let's open it now to members of the public. Mr. Follander.
Yes. Hi, Richard Follander, 399 Old Bedford Road. I'm the co-chair of the Bruce Stream and Rail Trail Committee. And we actually received a letter through the select board about this issue. The Bruce Stream and Rail Trail Committee, however, has no jurisdiction over this, obviously. However, at the same time, we are considering the possibility of expanding the charge of our committee to include the reformatory branch. As was mentioned earlier by the chair, Bedford is paving their section of the trail and will be constructing an underpass under Route 62 and continuing the paving then to the Concord line. So our position is that it's a good time for us to plan for what we do when there will be a significant increase of cyclists coming in from Bedford. Whether that plan includes paving or is not known, right? But it would be good for us to make a plan because issues such as you're having at the cemetery undoubtedly be exacerbated by an increase in users who come to the trail. So I just wanted to let you know that, we were informed about it. I'm here just to, hear your comments. I think the signage is a good idea. Into the future, again, we hope to work with the select board and to set up a process whereby all the various people along the reformatory branch, including the cemetery and Great Meadows and abutters and everyone else, can take a look at the current usage and look toward the future and come up with a plan that will hopefully provide solutions to any problems that we foresee in the future. So that's what, just wanted to make that comment.
Well, it's good to have you with us and to see you and to hear from get your point of view, Mr. Follander. Thank you. Susan Bates, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to point out that I think it's 2023 when the paving is going to be done up to the Concord line. Is that?
That's correct.
Okay. And I've heard you mention a number of times about wanting to broaden the charge, but the steps, there are a number of steps before any grouping is done that's going to address this.
Correct.
And I haven't seen you on the select board agenda, and I don't believe it will happen until at least after the holidays. I'm not sure.
Oh, it will. That's correct.
But I think that when I hear you speak, it sounds like you assume that this is going to happen. And as a matter of fact, you were kind of soliciting green cards at the Trails Committee earlier this week or last week. So I just wanted everyone to know that this is a process that has not yet started and it hasn't been decided who the components are. However, in acknowledgement of the letter from the Cemetery Committee, I'm sure that all the constituencies will be included, but the shape and the format is yet to be determined. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you.
I apologize if I came as though it was an assumption. It is not an assumption on my part or the committee's part. And we will be suggesting a plan to the select board after the first of the year at some point. It will not, nothing will be happening for the next month or two at least.
Okay, thank you. Bill Robichaud, you had something you wanted to say as well.
Yes, okay. Yeah, I just wanted to say, I came to the cemetery meeting back in February and we talked about the signage that the Trails Committee had put together. I'm not a member of the Trails Committee, but I am the steward of the trails that that the cemetery uses. They did forward the signage that we had drafted, and I don't know if you had a chance to review it. It's not the same signage you're proposing as far as what would go at the end of Chestnut Circle, but it would go at other parts of the trail, just saying it's kind of the rules, regulations, and courtesies of trail use. They haven't finalized that yet because of the COVID issues. They just haven't had a chance to socialize it. But I just want to let you know that that's still a work in process, and it could be signage you would use. The other part of that is that they also propose signage, and I think I mentioned it at that meeting, to that trail that goes across Moore's Swamp, that they wanted to put a sign up that says walk trails across wet across this trail. So I think that they also have that sign that they would be proposing. So that's why I just want to bring some information forward.
Thank you, Bill. I think we touched on this last year or in February, that because of the land south of the Reformatory Trail, which you have done such a wonderful job preserving those trails, because that land actually belongs to the cemetery, I think our jurisdiction and our inclination is to have something to say about any signs that get posted in that area. So I'm certainly glad that you are thinking about posting them, that you've drafted language to post signs in the area. I would just urge you to run it by the committee before any posting happens, because it's our bailiwick and we're jealous of it.
No, I am in total agreement. That's why they forward you those drafts. But I just want to give you the status of where those drafts were as far as all of the trails in the town. You know, the natural resources is going to post those at some point or some version, we believe. So I just want to give you an update as to where that that effort is standing right now.
I speak for myself. I have seen no sign, no language, no drafts for signs at all. Have you, Aaron? Where's Aaron?
No, I have not.
You may have sent them to the Trails Committee, but we've not seen anything.
No, I think Delia had sent it to you back around February. I think it was actually February 14th.
Ah.
So it's been quite a while. That's why I say.
Would you ask Delia to resend that Valentine's Day gift to us so we can see what we think?
Yes, I just asked her what the status was the other day. I wanted to know myself, and it's because of COVID, everything's been in priority. So
thank you.
I can resend it myself, or I'll have Delia send it. So
yeah, you send it to Aaron or send it to me, and whoever gets it first will forward it to everybody else.
Okay.
Any other Mr. Kemp, you're unmuted.
Yeah, hi, thank you. Thank you all. I'm Nate Kemp at 59 Mallard Drive. I just wanted to add a bit of extra information from a cyclist perspective. Somebody that has been cycling around town for about 10 years, but only in the last, say, year or so did I even learn that the yellow blazed trail that skirts along the east side of the old burial ground away from the actual grave area even existed to connect between where the bridge is behind the hollow cul-de-sac and essentially 62. And so previously the hill with the erosion concerns that was mentioned before was kind of the primary place to pass between that section of two trails. So I thought it might be worth considering in the future, actually signage that encourages cyclists to take that more removed trail that skirts around the east side of the cemetery, and potentially also look at ways to divert people coming through there directly to the bridge and not have to kind of come through those boulders up onto the pavement and then back down onto the bridge. There could be planting or shrubs or something like that, which causes the trail to essentially skirt around and not onto the pavement. So if you do those two things, you could essentially make that steep hill off limits to bikes, encourage people to go around them, and also direct them straight onto the bridge, and therefore there's nobody in contact with any burial ceremonies or anybody else that is in the cemetery to visit grave sites of loved ones or whatnot. So just a suggestion to put out there, which might end up killing two birds with one stone, those being the the interruptions to services as well as the erosion of that steep section. Thanks.
Thank you, Nate. Any response to Nate's thoughts? Leo? Leo, you're muted. Can't hear you.
Try *9, Leo.
He just has to undo his mute. All right.
Leo, sometimes the space bar does it.
Yeah.
I think he's
Is
on.
that
He's on.
better?
I think he's on.
Leo. We couldn't
I
hear,
don't know.
we couldn't hear any of that, so you have to start again.
Okay, when in the course of human events, it becomes, no, I just think, you know, we had talked earlier about trying to keep the bikes onto the paved areas because the damage takes place off the paved areas. So, you know, I think that area behind the, off of Bedford Street onto the connection to the pathway, you know, it goes through Cat's Pond in that sensitive area. There's a lot of wild animals and stuff down there. It's, you know, my preference, of course, would be to have people just go through the cemetery. But then, you know, I hear what Aaron and Tish are saying, that, you know, that disturbs funerals when they're going on. So I hate to see this wetlands getting further deteriorated by traffic of you know, bicycles going into the soft ground. But I don't know.
Yeah, just to clarify, I wasn't talking about the swampy area where that cuts east to west. I was talking about, you know, the trail that basically starts just to the east of the easternmost gate, and skirts around the hill, where that's not a swampy area. That's raised up above the swamp considerably, unlike the part that cuts after you cross the bridge directly to the east, parallel to
Well, actually, that area is it is swampy. If you look at the area right next to that Cat's Pond, that is swampy area. There was a road there a long time ago, and it went up the hill to the parking lot behind you know, Author's Ridge. But the area from that incline to the circle, that's wetlands back there. You can see certain times of year you start sinking into it. So yeah, I'm a little reluctant to make a bicycle, you know, encourage more people to come in and use it if you've already got a way to get there on paved roads.
Mm-hmm. Nate, I have to tell you that Leo is our resident naturalist. He haunts those trails all the time. In fact, he grew up over there. His father used to manage the cemetery. So he's the one who pointed out to me there was a rookery of heron back in there, and he knows all the different trees and all the different kind of animals. That is a pretty, it's a narrow trail, the one you're talking about, that skirts behind, and there was a road there a long time ago. It is a very delicate area, but it's certainly very scenic, and I can see why you would enjoy riding your bike there. I think I would say that Leo's concern about preserving it is a good one. There must be other ways that one could get to the Reformatory Branch Trail from Bedford Road. I think one of them is just to ride your bike through the cemetery, but being mindful, as most people are, if there's a service going on, sort of dismount and try to skirt it as best you can. Or one could always go down, bike down, 62 Bedford Road to the new part of the cemetery and access the, an avid bicyclist would know how you could access the Reformatory Trail from that road back there. We can't make any decisions today regarding this, but I think our inclination is to do what we can to protect and discourage the use of unpaved trails on the cemetery property. At least that's my feeling, and I suppose Leo and I are of one mind on that issue. Other comments, or Nate, if you want to respond, we have time to talk a little bit more about this before we move on.
No, I didn't necessarily have anything else to add. I mean, ultimately the unpaved trail between the bridge and Reformatory branch trail, that doesn't really have any alternatives either, even though there are sort of two separate parallel trails through there. But that's obviously higher ground than the wetlands. But yeah, I think, from my original point was just that, if the erosion on the steep hill is the big problem, and an eruption of services is a big problem, then the skirting around approach is just one to consider.
Sure. And I do think that if you were to take your bike through the cemetery paved roads to Chestnut Hollow, the circle at the end, and then cross the bridge with your bike, there are a couple of ways to go over to Reformatory branch that are preferred and probably are used by most bicyclists without going either across the wetlands to the east or taking the skirted road around the foot of that hill. But again, we'll certainly talk about this again. We'll revisit this, Nate, and I appreciate very much your candid thoughts on the matter.
My pleasure. Yeah, thank you.
Any other members have anything else they want to add before we move on? Let's put this on our agenda for next time. We can talk, I think, about signage and sort of digest the things that Mr. Follander and Mr. Kemp and Mr. Robichaud have shared with us, and see if we can perhaps address Aaron's suggestion, and also keep in mind the things that Leo has told us. So if there's nothing further, I would like to move back to D5 and also thank you, Nate, and Bill, and Mr. Follander, Richard, for joining us today.
Thank you.
You can stick with us if you want. All right, let's go to D5, Master Plan Continued Discussion. We have 4 parts here, and different people brought them up. And so I wanted to ask if they might kick us off by saying something further about them. What we're trying to do here is prioritize these things so that we have new priorities going forward, maybe not immediately, but soon. And so what we're doing is investigating these 5 possibilities, these 5 issues, and prioritizing. We know that Aaron has only so much time and energy. He can't do it all. Aaron, did you want to say something? Can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Now I hear you.
Okay, sorry. I think so. Just real quick, we actually need to jump back to item D4. We didn't do D4 yet.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. Thank you very much. All right, let's do D4.
So just a quick update on the priority projects. Obviously, mausoleum lots, we have an approved rate, and they're for sale.
I think that's great. I wish I could give everybody a glass of champagne or something.
So we'll see what happens. We will continue to work through the survey for the newer section to identify locations, and we'll bring those before the committee at a future meeting the next month or so. The record scanning project, we met with the vendor Boston Scanning today and have a plan and a date to start on Tuesday of next week. They anticipate a 2-day scanning process to work at the cemetery office to scan in all of the documents that we have contracted with them. And then they had talked about something like it was up to 8 weeks, I believe it was, to transfer all the data to a digital record, make it accessible online for cemetery staff to kind of go through. make sure everything's correct and accurate. And then we will roll out some type of a public component where the general public can search the database to find some records and some information at Sleepy Hollow. So the project is ongoing. And I want to say thank you to Tish and to Anna for all their work and getting it to this point. And it'll be an exciting project. It'll really help us from an operational level, but I think it's also great on a public interaction level as well to have that information available, especially nowadays where everyone has that, they can have their phone available. They can be walking through. There'll be a map component where they can find graves and lots and search them on their phone and then kind of locate them on a map while they're visiting the cemetery. So.
Yeah, I want to second what Aaron said. Thanks to you, Aaron, and to Tish and to Anna. This has also been on, not for 6 years, but it's been on our list of things to do for quite a long time. And we are really seeing it being accomplished. And I think it's just wonderful. Thank you so much to all of you for what you've done. It's great.
Thank you. And the next project, the headstone restoration. So there's no real updates from the last meeting. That's kind of standing by to stand by right now. We do plan on reaching out to vendors this month to get some price solicitation. Again, we're looking to do around $10,000 worth of headstone restoration. That's what's budgeted this year. So we had budgeted last year. We were a little over that just with the scope. So we'll get some prices and we'll keep the committee up to date with the project as we go along. We don't anticipate, obviously it's the winter season now. We wouldn't be able to do any restoration work until the springtime when it warms up. But we hope to get a vendor out here to look at so they can visit the site and look at the stones before the snow buries any headstones or markers that we want to have restored.
And we hope that maybe even Tamara Khan will bid again, since she did such a wonderful job last time.
We will reach out to her and make sure she's aware of the scope of work, and if she wants to provide a bid to us.
Aaron, you helpfully included Jerry's letter to Miss Tamara Khan, and I think today we want to sign off on that. Is that right?
Yes.
Jerry, I thought your letter was just fine. It looks good to me. Did everybody else have a chance to read it? It was in the packet, the email that Aaron sent along with the agenda and the rates the other day. Well, I'd like to. Do we need to have do we need to make this an official motion or?
No, we can we'll draw if the committee's good. If I see the head nods, I will. We'll get it in the mail tomorrow. Okay, great. Well, everybody feel the same way? I think it's a very nice letter. Okay. Well done. Thank you, Jerry. Now, again, I just want to say we've made some terrific progress on these priorities this year. I mean, the work done on the headstones, we finished with the mausoleum, the record scanning is underway. It's so satisfying. You set a goal, and because of the hard work of people, especially Aaron and Tish and Anna, you too, and a lot of other people. I know that Andrea did a lot of research to help us get to where we are with the mausoleum lots. So I want to pause for a second. And, it's nice to get things done. And I think this committee has gotten some things done. And Aaron and Tish have gotten some things done. So hats off to everybody. Okay, let's jump down to D5. Leo, we talked about this last time, and you had some good thoughts. I know this is an area that it concerns you a lot. Did you want to say anything further about it?
Yeah, first, you got to change that title. Reforestation plan? No. It's not a forest. It's, I guess, a tree planting, a plan for tree plantings. But what my main concern is that, let me back up a little bit first. I think that Aaron and Tish and the Public Works Department are doing a great job. Trees are going in, and that's really encouraging. I think where there could be some improvement is getting some trees in places where they will block the sun at certain times of day from causing erosion. And so I I went down and saw Tish this week actually, and I've learned a lot about how this works. If you see these stumps in the cemetery near graves, someone else owns that property. It's not the town that owns it. So there is a tree that was planted there 150 years ago, and now it's down. You know, my thinking was, well, just plant another one next to it. Well, that's the problem. The town doesn't own that property. Someone else does. So what I did is I asked Tish to let me look at a couple of the maps, because in certain older sections of the cemetery, not all of the land is sold. In the newer areas, like up in the Pines and Chestnut Hollow, most of that land is sold to someone, so you can't plant in most spots. But up near like the Old Hill Burial Ground, there are certain areas that are big enough and close enough to the road where you can actually plant some trees. And so the conundrum here is to find those areas and then plant a tree that will replace the one that has come down, either came down naturally or was cut down for some other reason. But what we're seeing is smaller trees are planted and they'll grow 20 or 30 feet, but they won't block off the same area that an 80 or 100-foot tree would block off. So that's what I'm most interested in, is getting trees in that will actually help stop some of the erosion that's taking place. And it's a multi-step process. So that's what the problem is. You have to find where to put them and then decide which one to put in. And so I know that Davy Tree Company is involved, and they're doing a great job in a number of places, but I don't think they're tasked or have thought about how do we stop some of this erosion. And that's what I think this tree planting process should be about on the next go around next year, is picking out the ideal spots and the ideal trees to put in places to stop erosion.
Yeah. Leo, I guess my concern is to take advantage of your expertise and keep you involved in this. Perhaps, I mean, you've already meeting with Tish on an informal basis. Maybe you could do that with Aaron too, just to sort of brainstorm and counsel and advise, since you know a lot about this and you're learning a lot about it. When trees are going to be planted, that they're the kind of trees that are going to grow tall and do the thing you want it to do and limit erosion. I would just want to encourage you to keep on doing what you're doing, and maybe from time to time sitting down with our superintendent. Those are my first thoughts on the matter.
Yeah. Well, you're giving me too much credit. I don't have a lot of expertise on it, and I too am going through a learning process. So, my simplistic way of doing it was just plant one where one was before. Well, I learned you can't do that. But I will say this, Tish and Aaron, on the area where the two Melvin brothers are buried, an attempt was made to grow some grass there, and it was a really valid attempt. And the matting was put down, and the grass was sprayed, and that got burnt, and then grass was sprayed again. It didn't make it through the season. So then what happened is just within the last month or so, 5 hawthorn trees have been planted there, and they will do a great job of providing shade for most of the day for that those graves along that little ridge. But further up, you're going to continue to get the erosion unless you get a taller tree further away. And so that's the type of stuff I wanted to spend some time on. And there's like 4 very sensitive areas in the cemetery where it would benefit from having an oak or a sugar maple or something put in. And it's going to take a long time for them to get real big, but at least we get started on now. And one in particular is along the road leading up to that 2-car parking lot at the foot of Author's Ridge. if you go in the Pickard Gate and then you go past that vault and then around the hollow, Verrills, who own Verrills Farm, they have a lot there, and there's a big old oak that's been cut down. There's a stump, but it's all dead around it. So that's the type of area that I'm trying to think of how we can get that covered again so that we don't end up, putting some good topsoil down, putting some good grass and just having it burnt up. So that's what I'm thinking about for, helping with the tree planting.
Yeah. Aaron, do you want to say anything to that?
I would, thanks, Paul. So Leo, I'd be happy to meet with you anytime if you want to take a walk and point out the locations of interest to you that you'd like some trees planted. We do run town-wide, separate from the cemetery. We do run a tree planting program as funding allows, where we will plant right-of-way trees that are planted within the right-of-way or on trees that are also within town property, so public shade trees or setback trees. The 5 hawthorns you mentioned were planted in connection with a number of other trees that were planted in the cemetery elsewhere this fall. That was done with grant money that we received from an MVP grant. We do have some public shade tree funding that is in the general fund as well that we'll use. And so we'll be planting again in the spring. So if there's locations you want to walk with me in the fall, or excuse me, over the winter, and we can identify those locations, and we can definitely plant some more trees. And,
great, yeah.
And planting grass is tough. And it doesn't survive very well oftentimes in areas where there's no irrigation. So that's where we kind of struggle with the cemetery. There's not irrigation. So unless we're out there hand watering every day, which we just don't have the resources to do, it can be tough if it's not already established. So hopefully those trees will do a better job of shading that area, and we can try to throw some grass down again in the springtime and see if it can kind of take a little bit in that area. Again, happy to walk through any locations you want. We can look at some trees, and I will use this opportunity to throw out there that we have been working on a tree guide for the town of Concord for the last few months now. It's in a final draft form, and I'm going to be rolling it out to some different departments to put eyes on before we publicly post it. But I will, if I can, take 2 minutes to show this committee. And this is actually the first time that I'm publicly showing this tree guide to anyone. So it's still in the draft form, but we talk about trees pretty often here. I feel it's appropriate to share with the group. So this is the front cover and the back page of the tree guide. So this is, Concord Public Works tree planting guide. We're working with a professional graphic designer to help us with this guide. And really what it, next picture. Kind of in general, it's just a general guide. It shows, how to plant, where to plant, locations. We talk about species. And I'm going to be putting this on the town website with a downloadable link that folks can download this guide and look at it either in a PDF, or we'll have some paper printouts as well. We're going to talk about locations, proximity to the right of way or utilities, how to maintain the tree, how to care for a tree. If people want to plant them themselves, proper planting techniques. And then we're going to provide a recommended trees. This is a tree chart of the 30 trees we're recommending to be planted in the town of Concord. You can see here a small tree list. Obviously the hawthorn is on there. Have a few small trees, large trees, medium-sized trees and large trees. And then a chart here, a graphic at the bottom that shows kind of, how large these trees will actually get in relation to each other. So it's a pretty detailed guide. And then on the back, this is going to be an unfoldable poster that folds out to like 3x4. And you'll see, the trees listed. Each of those 30 trees is listed on here with, a picture of their flower or their fruit, and a nice little snippet and the narrative here that matches the narrative that's on the tree chart here. So it's kind of for tree ID, tree identification. But I'll be sharing this, a link to this will be on this, probably on the cemetery page near where we did the tree identification, the 24 trees that we tagged, kind of tie everything together, and this will be distributed across a couple of departments. But this is a first, I guess, if you will, a first share of what that poster kind of looks like. But
it's beautiful.
Yeah, nice.
Fantastic. Nice work. That's a good thing. Will people be able to pick those up at the town hall, or?
Yeah, hopefully. if, town hall is technically closed to the public, if you will, right now. So we're going to be sure to do a campaign to kind of push it out electronically, but we're going to have printouts, and printouts will be available at Public Works office. Well, it's not, doors are not open to the public. We're there. So if people want to knock on the door, they can pick one up. And obviously when the town offices are reopened, they'll be scattered throughout town. Hopefully, get through the schools and any other way we can encourage people to plant trees.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful. Great.
Anyways, that's my tree planting
Yeah.
advertisement.
Outstanding project. It's a beautiful little book.
Yeah.
That chart on the back with all those trees and the various sizes, that's great. It's beautiful. I want to go on to the next thing, the Columbarium issue, which Jerry and Andrea have been working on. I want to invite Andrea, first of all, if you wanted to share some of the things that you sent a very nice note to me and to Jerry and copied Tish and Aaron on it. Would you share some of that, what you have in mind, what you found? And then I want to ask Jerry to talk a little bit about it too.
Sure. Well, I was trying to figure out the steps really going forward, which I mostly got from Tish when I stopped by to sign the deeds last time. Because, we can all go online and look at lots of pictures of Columbarium, and they're very cool, and we probably all have different styles we like, but in getting it, step one, step two for us, Tish mentioned the first thing we really need are some drawings. And in order to get those drawings, even before that, we need the people doing that will need elevations. They'll need to know exactly where it's going to go and how big it is. And so in figuring out, do we pay people for these drawings? She did mention that several years back when we first started talking about Columbarium, there was a company, Hardy Doric Vault Company from Chelmsford, that had offered to do the drawings for free just to give us some, so we could start getting rough estimates of the cost. And so when things settled down, I know you guys have been very busy, Aaron and Tish, with the fall cleanup, but maybe reaching out again to that company and seeing if they would still be willing to do those drawings to sort of get us started. And then also, I did have a question on how bidding for a project like this would work, which is, if we have a design or a style in mind, are there a list of companies that we can go to and ask for bids, Aaron? Or do you just post a bid and see who replies? I'm not sure how far into design we should get until we know that process.
So, we could reach out to somebody to try to give us a concept on, but really if we're going to, it depends. So really a couple different answers, depending on the size of the Columbarium that the committee wants to pursue, that's going to dictate obviously the cost of it. And when we cross different financial thresholds, there's different bidding requirements. For a vertical structure like this, where it's going to be, it's a vertical structure, it's not necessarily public works construction, the threshold's $10,000. So if we're going over $10,000, I'll need to do a full solicitation. In order for me to do that, I'm going to need a detailed design. So we can hire a designer to come and design something for us, and it's going to be very specific, right? We'll need it can't just be like a free design, right? I'm going to have to hire somebody to do the design, professional firm. We're going to get, have our engineering department do kind of like a peer review on that. So what we do on different projects in town, larger projects. And then once we have the design, we'll solicit it publicly. The state has procurement laws that we have to follow on how we solicit it. They're on their website. There's a couple different forums, also in the newspaper, et cetera. And then if we want to, once it's publicly listed, we can share it with, if there's a specific firm or construction companies that we want to share it to. We can't say, hey, we want you to bid on it, but say there's an open bid. If you want to see it, here's a link to get the information.
So so it's the first thing we need really is a design in mind. So are there designers that you and Tish would recommend that we work with at first, or?
I've never designed a Columbarium or this will be a first for me. So I'm sure we can find, a firm that kind of specializes in that and kind of pursue and get some pricing for a design. What we basically do is request to give us the proposal and then go with the proposal that's most advantageous for the town. And then Obviously, the design it costs money. It's not free, so we have to identify funding if, in a future fiscal year, if we want to spend money on a design for the columbarium. We just need to identify the funding. Right now in the cemetery fund, we have available for our FY21 budget, there's not money in there for a design or hiring a designer, but that's something we could look at for a future fiscal year. I'm developing the budget right now for 22. So if it's something we want to identify, I can earmark that or ask for some additional funds.
All right. Well, Jerry, what did you find when you were looking at the columbarium information?
Sure. Well, so kind of like two extremes. Number one, a columbarium as an item is a pretty simple, straightforward structure. The way that, I started thinking about it, it's like working with Legos. So you can build, a Lego structure kind of to whatever dimensions you want. And that's kind of the approach to a columbarium, that there are, specific sizes for individual niches, and it's really a matter of how many niches. But one of the things that struck me in looking at different implementations, I don't know, is it possible for me to share a screen here? I've got this green thing here. Let me just try this. I just want to show you a couple of things here. Let me go share the desktop. Whoops. All right, I'm not having any luck here. Let me try this again. Share. Okay. So what I'm just going to show you here, I'm not going to run it, but this is from a video, and you can see them lowering a new columbarium in place. This one, the dimensions are somewhere along the lines of like 10 or 12 feet by about 6 feet high. It's also approached from both sides. You can see that they're lowering it onto a concrete pad. And they mentioned in this video that this particular columbarium weighs 4.5 tons or 9,000 pounds. So I'll just stop the share. So in some ways, it's a pretty simple process. It's a box as big or as small as you want. When I went out to the area the other day where we've looked at putting it down those 2 flights of stairs, that kind of raises a whole other set of questions. In some ways, the simplest approach would be to buy X number of units, like I just showed you, maybe 1 or more, and then they could be set up somewhere in the knoll adjacent to the main road. I mean, that would kind of be like the simplest thing, like dropping off a big mailbox, and there it would be. When you look at the actual site that we've explored, there's a nice curve as you approach it. There's a paved path that curves to the left that meets up with the stairs going down. There's a gentle slope. So there's more to the site in terms of aesthetics and possibilities and design than just, okay, let's figure out how big a thing, and then they'll drop it in place onto a concrete pad. So I guess as I was looking, it was less, my interest was less on some of the practical matters and more in the realm of the aesthetic experience. What would it be like to bring your loved one's cremains to be placed there? What would it be like to go and visit? And what would you want that experience to be like? And that kind of opens the door to a broader discussion about landscape design and aesthetic, because there are alternatives to, that simple kind of boxy structure that I showed you. We're not ready to go there yet, but I guess in thinking of what Sleepy Hollow is, in thinking of the overall aesthetics of the place, I've been in some really kind of ugly cemeteries, and we're at the other end of the spectrum. It's really a good place to be. And I guess our opportunity here with the Columbarium is to extend that experience even further. And I guess I'll just wrap up by saying that, you know, when you stand there at that site, when you take even just the approach of the curved path to the left, you know, it's kind of a journey because the hill gets slowly unveiled. And when you stand there, there's also a view through the trees of some water. So it's potentially a very beautiful, reflective site. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Jerry. I think you and Andrea have both touched on this in a way that encourages us to move forward with it. I would think that it would be worth earmarking some money in the budget 2022 budget for a design, bearing in mind the things that Andrea and Jerry have just shared with us. Thoughts, comments?
Yeah, I think definitely it would be worth going forward with design. And, you know, as we get closer to hiring a designer, when we have that in the budget, we can talk more about the options that Jerry was talking about too.
Yeah, I mean, just to have the money there, if we don't get around to using it, we can use it the following year. But if we don't have it there, we can't do it, right? So if it's not budgeted, we're stuck.
I think we should also maybe think about making it a subcommittee. I know there's a lot of, you know, extra legwork that goes with that, but, you know, I mean, there's a big demand for this and it's a serious project. And I do think it's, when you make it public, you also then get public input, which can sometimes be helpful and sometimes not. But of course, you know, I think, you know, it's going to be hard to do this important project, you know, meeting once a month with all these other agenda items, you know, that if we're serious about moving forward, which I fully support, that we should think about making it a subcommittee.
We talked about that, remember, Brian, a few months ago, and we got discouraged because of all the red tape. But if we could review that, maybe Aaron or Tish can tell us, or Anna, what or for that matter, Susan, what sort of difficulties being a subcommittee presents?
I think the biggest thing was making sure we publicly post the meeting, which, you know, if this committee wants to form a subcommittee for a larger project like the Columbarium, I think that would be appropriate, and I can work with that subcommittee and the cemetery committee to assist with the posting requirements and meeting those. So I can talk to the town clerk's office to get, you know, inform them of, you know, the interest of this committee to form that subcommittee, and we can make it work. What I would just be caution on is forming too many subcommittees at the same time. That might become a little bit cumbersome, but you know, if there's a specific larger initiative or one or two that the committee feels are appropriate for a subcommittee, I would encourage that.
Well, that's encouraging. We've already got the personnel because Andrea and Jerry are on board. So are you guys willing to be a subcommittee?
Sure, I would be a subcommittee. I think it's just a matter of like, when we do meet, are we meeting with like Tish and Aaron to map out exactly the precise place we would eventually want this columbarium? And I guess we would eventually include the designer when we can hire one. So, I mean, this could be a very long ongoing subcommittee by the time we can afford a designer, but yes, I'm willing to definitely start on it anyway.
Yeah, having a subcommittee doesn't mean you have to meet every month. You meet as needed. So, and yeah, I would say that if it's a subcommittee, if two members of the cemetery committee are going to be Andrea and Jerry, I would definitely have somebody from my staff meet with the group to help facilitate and make sure minutes are taken, minutes have to be posted, all those administrative duties. So I don't know if that's, if you want me to kind of look into a little bit of a budget, what that would look like, and maybe kind of come up with a time frame of maybe next steps, if the if the committee agrees that's a new priority, I can look into that and follow up with the committee.
Aaron, that's great. Jerry, are you willing to be on the subcommittee?
Certainly, yes, please. Be happy to.
Great. Brian, it's your idea. You seconded or you pushed it. We talked about it before. Leo, have you anything to say on the matter?
No, I'm fine. That was good.
Well, I'm willing to go ahead with it. I think it would be good. It's been on our radar for a long time, and this is a sign that we're really just thinking it's worth pushing further. There's certainly been a demand for it. I remember when we had the public hearing in November of 2018, somebody from D came up to us and said, I get requests for Columbarium all the time. Why don't you guys move on that? We said, well, one thing at a time. First, we'll get our mausoleum lined up. Tish, you get requests too, don't you?
I have a list of probably 6 or 7 people waiting for one.
So I think it's time. So maybe we should move to establish a subcommittee with Andrea and Jerry as our subcommittee, and with the stipulation that they report to the committee every now and then when you've got something to tell us. So I'd like to move that we establish a Columbarium Subcommittee with Andrea and Jerry, and to begin meeting when you feel ready, and to also, with that, encourage Aaron to place some funding in the 2022 budget for a design. Does anybody want to second that?
I'll second that.
Leo Carroll, second.
Motion.
Any comments before we jump further? Then let's take a vote to sign off on the thing. I'll begin by saying, yay, I'm in favor. Andrea?
Yay.
Jerry Susi?
Aye.
Leo Carroll?
Aye.
And Brian Davidson?
Aye.
Hi, and Brian, thank you for bringing it up. All right, so we're good. We've got a subcommittee, and Aaron's going to work with you guys to help you get all the T's crossed and I's dotted, and also figure out how much should go into the budget for 2022 to fund a designer. Very good. All right. To return to our agenda, underdeveloped land use plan, which is Brian brought that up, and I wanted to ask Brian if he had anything he would like to say about that.
Yeah, just, I guess, the idea is just, which kind of, tails on to what we were discussing earlier with our bicycle discussion, so we have these, I don't know, 50 acres or so of kind of this undeveloped land, more swamp, cat pond, the 2 trails that connect, from the Chestnut Hollow over to the Reformatory branch, and then some of the land behind the Knoll area, that's woods, So I guess, since soon the Reformatory branch will probably be, developed, or at least we know that Bedford is, probably developing. And so there'll be more people at our door, so to speak. I think now is the time to kind of come up with a lot of the thoughts that we were sharing during our bicycle discussion. Do we want to have a bike path there? Do we want to make that more of a mixed use trail? Do we want?
I'll be off in a minute.
Are there certain
turn it down just a little bit?
Bikes should not be allowed. So, I think it's primarily just kind of, we've sent these letters out to these different committees. So I think it would just be kind of getting our ideas in a row and knowing exactly what we want. And so, some of the actions that I would see, us doing would just be, again, determining what kind of paths we want back there, working with, the cemetery crew to kind of align those paths. I think we've talked about that last year, with them. You know, I think when Bill Robichaud was first here, we gave them the power to kind of decide where the paths are. So just kind of finalize that area to just keep up with the other committees that are kind of addressing these issues, like the Trails Committee, working on the signage for the bicycles, maybe pushing that out, as Aaron was saying earlier during our bicycle discussion, you know, posting more signage, you know, at the Reformatory branch junction and again at that bridge. But then there's other, you know, things to think about too with that. There, you know, improvements to Cat Pond. You know, I mean, that's probably pretty limited, but, you know, are there ways that we can improve Cat Pond? Can we improve, you know, the people's experience back there? Are there places like, you know, benches to sit, or we want to improve nature, you know, being a big part of Sleepy Hollow. So like, do you want to put like duck boxes in Cat Pond or something like that? It's also, you know, a large area in that spot is a Native American area. With, you know, could you put a, you know, some kind of Native American plaque up in that area, just kind of, you know, discussing. I don't think there's a lot of that in town, so that was like another opportunity to kind of find opportunities to recognize maybe Native Americans. Could part of the trail down to like the pond be ADA compliant? And then some of the other ideas, you know, was, you know, the little branch that we were talking about that goes from Bedford Street over to the bridge, you know, having that more of an author's walk. And is there something we could do to enhance that area? So primarily it's, what do we want to do with, that area? Do we want to keep it, make it easier for bicycles to get in and out? Do we not want to make it easy for bikes to get in and out? You know, do we want to keep it where people can go and experience nature and solace, you know, while they're there? So that's kind of basically the ideas that I had for that project.
Yeah, well, it's a good idea. You know, a few years ago, it was not that long ago, we talked to the Trails Committee, and we actually had a joint hike. We hiked across the swamp there. We were talking about whether or not we were going to build a boardwalk. That was a possibility. We found it would cost a fortune to build an ADA compliant boardwalk across that. I guess it's 150 yards of swamp, but it was a great idea. That would certainly take care of the bicycle problem there. Yeah, so maybe they want to ride their bikes on the boardwalk. So, all right. Yeah. You know, we only have so much we can do at a time, but I definitely think it's this is a very important thing that you're talking about, Brian. And I think to some extent we're going to begin addressing it just when we talk about some of the things about signs that Aaron was speaking of earlier. But yeah, I think the bicycle thing prompts us to think, to remind us that we're responsible for that land, and what are we going to do with it? Any other thoughts or comments on what Brian's brought up? Okay, Brian, we're going to go to the next one then. The repair and restoration of cemetery stone walls. This has also been come up several times when we were doing the road. We completely redid the roads a few years ago in the cemetery. The next big project like that is redoing the stone walls, but that's a big project. You have to get money from the Concord Preservation Act. You have to borrow money. It's more than we can afford. But Leo, you mentioned it. Do you want to say anything about it? You're muted. Can't hear you. Can't hear you. Anna, can you help him? We can't hear Leo.
I think we can mute, but we cannot unmute people.
Yeah. Can't hear you.
All right.
We can hear you now.
There you go.
Okay. So now I can't see my image, but I agree, Paul, that, build the stone walls will be a very, very expensive project, but you're talking about the big stone walls like on Bedford Street and at the Old Hill Burying Ground. There's about a dozen other smaller stone walls that they're deteriorating, and I don't think they need to be completely torn down and a new one built. I think it's a question of getting them repointed, or just have the mortar filled in between the rocks, or have a drain put into them with things like that. This has been particularly noticeable this year because we had this long dry spell, and then every time it rains afterwards, you can see stones popping out of these walls. So my hope is that we can prioritize which walls we should try to save, or which walls we should try to get repaired quickly with our own funds, and then continue to go after the big walls, which are going to be very expensive, but go after a smaller wall and have it repaired, every year, or maybe 2 a year. So what I've done, and I'm really being unfair about this, I think yesterday I sent an email to Aaron and asked him if he had some background information on this, and if there were prior bids, and what the costs might be for doing that type of thing. I know that right near Author's Ridge, a wall was completely rebuilt. I'm sure it was very expensive, but I don't know. But the smaller walls, I think, can be done at a fairly reasonable price. So, Aaron, I know I didn't give you hardly any time at all, but if you've got anything to add as far as costs and all are concerned, I think we all want to hear it. Thanks.
Thanks, Leo.
We do have an inventory that Tish completed a number of years, actually probably not a few years back. Tish can elaborate. It did a full inventory of all the walls, the length, the size of the walls, but we don't have a cost associated with those. It's just an inventory for to be used for a future assessment.
Could we budget something to begin with treating some of these smaller problems?
We could. I mean, I would say for something like that, I would just get our in-house engineering group to look at that and try to fit that in and do it low cost as possible.
We would have to put out bids, request bids to do one of the. I mean, maybe a wall could be done.
I mean, we have engineers that work as our division is Highway and Grounds, which is what Tish and I are a part of, and Justine. But there's another division, there's an engineering division of Concord Public Works. We have engineers that I'm sure I could work with to kind of look at some of these walls with us and assess what needs to be done, whether it's just repointing on some of them or rebuilding them, and then kind of continue that assessment and then determine next steps and how we want to tackle it and come up with a game plan for maybe a long-term improvement project where we look at the assets and prioritize them and determine over however many years we make repairs that are needed.
Okay, it's not unlike what we're trying to do with the stone walls. I mean, with the headstones, the headstone preservation project.
Yeah, correct.
So I guess the question is, what could we do to start off? Just ask the engineering folks to give us.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something we can. I think this, on an operations side, we can just start working on that and start focusing on that as we have some time.
Leo, you want to respond to what Aaron has said?
No, that sounds really the right thing to be doing. It's they're really a beautiful enhancement to the cemetery, but they do just deteriorate after time. And I guess now is probably the time to try to at least keep them from further deterioration. That would not be an expensive project. So I'd like to get involved in that. So Aaron, I'll give you a call. Maybe I can go out with the guys and show them what I'm seeing. The reason I'm so focused on this is my uncle actually built some of those walls. And I remember when they were built. And so I kind of know where the cracks are and stuff.
I think you showed me where you put some you put your initials in the mortar at one point.
No. I didn't. My uncle put 1958, the year he built it. He just put
All
that.
right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I didn't want to falsely implicate you.
No, but you got, we have an attorney on this, so I'm not going to admit to anything.
Leo, yeah, I will get into contact with you, Leo, and meet. You and I can meet, and I'll grab one of the engineers and we can look at some of the walls.
Sounds great. Okay, Aaron, thank you very much.
You.
That's good.
That's great. That's why I twisted Leo's arm to get on the committee, because we want to take advantage of his ideas and how much he knows. He won't admit he knows so much, but he does. All right. I think the last thing is mausoleum sites for the new area. We've already talked about the a little bit. Aaron, where do we stand in sort of getting elevations and what we need to do to survey where they might be?
So the engineering group, we do it. They did start a survey of the two areas in the newer section of the cemetery. That's kind of just been on hold. We have some other priority projects in town that they're working on, and I think our priority was focusing on getting some rates established. So they'll be continuing on with that over the next couple of months.
Okay.
And as soon as I have an update, I will I'll provide it for the hopefully the next cemetery committee meeting, if not the following one.
Okay. Well, I want to thank everybody for being so patient. We went a long time today. Is there any committee comments about anybody on the committee want to make any comments? I see your dog on your couch there, Andrea. It's a pug.
Yes, he's snoring away.
He's very cute.
Very comfortable.
He's not interested in the meeting, I can see.
He's just waiting for dinner.
I think probably everybody's waiting for dinner, so we better finish up. Are there, Susan, did you want to say anything further? It's good to have you with us. Justine, good to have you with us. Thank you, Anna, for being with us this whole time. Again, hats off to Erin and to Ms. Hopkins for all of her work, hard work.
Yeah, I'd like to say one last thing is our next meeting won't be until 2021. So I want to say a couple things. First of all, Merry Christmas to everybody. And I cannot wait for this 2020 to end.
All right. All right. I agree with you. At least we want the pandemic to be over so we can all go out to our local bar and have a brew together, right? Something like that.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm not going to go over, we're time's wasted, but I will put together a list of things to talk about, to follow up on, and I'll send it to everybody. So I would like to move, first I was a second Leo's wishes to everyone to have a happy new year, a Merry Christmas, a happy Hanukkah, and God bless you all. And I'd like to move that we adjourn. Does someone want to second it?
I'll second.
Our vice chair seconds the motion. So all in favor, raise your hand to say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Everyone that said aye, I think everyone raised their hand. So that includes, so we're all done. And so hasta luego, hasta la próxima. Till the next time.
Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas.
And to all a good night.
Good night.
Take care. Bye-bye. Thanks, everyone.